The sun had barely lifted its head over the jagged ridges when the girl appeared, small against the wide desert, her bare feet whispering through red dust. She carried a clay jug half her size, its rim chipped and patched with resin, the sort her people made when they couldn't afford to break another. Eli Carter saw her from the ridge above the arroyo. At first he thought she was just a shadow moving through heat shimmer. Then he saw the glint of water catching in the jug's lip and realized what she was doing, fetching water alone. That wasn't something Apache girls did. Not out here, not this far north. He pulled his reins to slow the bay horse, watching her disappear between two cottonwoods that hugged the creek like old sentinels. A hawk screeched high above, the sound cutting through the morning stillness. She couldn't have been more than 12. Maybe 13. Her long black hair was tied with a strip of deer hide, her dress worn but carefully mended. There was pride even in her small, cautious steps, as if the earth itself was something sacred beneath her feet. Eli waited, the leather of his gloves creaking as he adjusted his grip. Something about her presence set his chest tight. There were no villages near his ranch. The last raid had driven most of the band east, beyond the San Pedro line. So what was a child doing here? Walking straight into Carter land with an empty jug and no escort? He thought about calling out. Then he thought better. Men in town talked plenty about the Apache, about stolen cattle, vanished travelers, smoke on the horizon, but Eli had been a soldier once. He'd seen what civilization had done to people just trying to survive. Sometimes the stories were true, but most times, they were what men told themselves to quiet their own guilt. He nudged the horse forward, keeping to the shadows of the mesquite. Down in the creek bed, the girl knelt by the water. The current was slow this time of year, more mud than river, but she worked with care, scooping sand away from a small pocket where the water ran clearer. The jug filled slow, each bubble rising like a sigh. Eli dismounted, boots sinking into soft clay. His horse flicked its ears uneasy. He took one step closer, and a faint snap broke the air. The girl froze. Her head turned quick as a deer's, and their eyes met. She didn't scream. Didn't flinch. Just stared, those deep amber-brown eyes fixed on him with a kind of stillness he hadn't seen since the war. For a second, neither of them breathed. The desert seemed to hold its wind. Eli raised a hand, palm open, the way you might greet a spooked animal. "Easy now," he said softly. "Ain't here to harm you." She said nothing, only shifted the jug to her hip, water sloshing, her other hand sliding toward the fold in her dress where something small and metallic flashed. A knife, no longer than her forearm. "All right," Eli murmured. "You're smart to be careful." A crow cawed somewhere behind them. She turned her head slightly at the sound, and in that heartbeat of distraction, he noticed the mark on her wrist, a faint blue tattoo just below the bone. The shape was old, deliberate. A tribal symbol, sure, but no, there was something else about it. Something familiar. He felt his gut twist. "Where'd you get that?" he asked quietly. Her eyes sharpened. Then, without a word, she turned and darted into the scrub, water splashing from the jug as she vanished between the trees. Eli cursed under his breath and ran after her, branches slapping his face. She was fast, barefoot, nimble, like the land itself carried her. But he was faster. He caught her by the arm near the ridge, the jug spinning out of her hands and shattering against a stone. She struggled, silent, fierce as a wildcat. "Easy," he barked, gripping her shoulders. "I just want to talk." She stilled, breathing hard. Dust streaked her face, sweat glimmering in the early light. And up close, Eli saw it clearer, the mark on her skin. It wasn't Apache. It was military. U.S. cavalry issue. His cavalry. The same unit brand he'd seen burned onto prisoners years ago, back when he'd been ordered to keep control, back when mercy had been a weakness. He let her go, hands trembling. The girl stumbled back, staring at him with wide, unreadable eyes. And for the first time in years, Eli Carter couldn't tell whether he was the hunter or the haunted. Eli didn't sleep that night. The desert air carried too many ghosts. He sat on his porch long after the sun sank behind the buttes, the last of its orange light slipping from his weathered hands like a confession he couldn't hold. Down in the barn, the horse shifted uneasily. Coyotes yipped somewhere far off, but his mind kept circling back to that girl, the water jug, the tattoo, and those eyes that had looked at him without fear, only memory. He had seen that same mark before, burned into the wrist of a young scout who'd begged him for water. The boy hadn't lived through the night. By morning, Eli saddled up. He told himself it was just to check the creek, maybe see if she'd come back. But a part of him already knew. He wasn't going to find peace until he found her again. The trail was faint, but Apache feet left whispers even the wind remembered. He followed it south through the mesquite flats until it vanished near an old mission ruin. Half stone, half bone-white ruin. The kind of place the desert took back in silence. Then he saw it. A faint smoke ribbon rising behind the bluff. He tied his horse, crept forward. There she was, the same girl, crouched near a low fire, humming something soft and sad. Her clay jug replaced with a smaller tin pail. A bundle of herbs lay beside her. Someone else lay nearby, an older woman wrapped in blankets, her breathing ragged. Eli froze. He'd stumbled into something sacred. The girl looked up before he could speak. No surprise this time, just quiet acceptance, as if she'd known he would follow. "You shouldn't be here," she said in a low voice, her English broken but sure. "Reckon you're right," he said, removing his hat. "But I couldn't walk away yesterday, not after what I saw on your wrist." Her eyes narrowed. "You did that." The words landed like stones. Eli's throat went dry. "No," he said quickly, then slower. "Not me, but my men. Years back. Orders I didn't question when I should have." The girl said nothing. She dipped the cloth into the tin pail and pressed it to the older woman's brow. Steam rose from the wound on her shoulder, a bullet graze by the look of it. "You got someone sick here," Eli said softly. "That your mother?" She hesitated, then nodded once. "Let me help." Her eyes flicked up hard. "You help with guns, not with hearts." He didn't argue. Just knelt beside the fire, slow and deliberate. "I know a thing or two about wounds. Let me clean it." She studied him a long while before sliding the cloth his way. The silence between them wasn't peace. It was fragile, like dry earth before rain. Eli worked quietly, rinsing the wound with the last of the water. The woman moaned, eyes fluttering open for a moment. When she saw his face, her breath hitched, and then she whispered something in Apache that made the girl stiffen. "What did she say?" Eli asked. "She remembers you," the girl said coldly. "From the river. She said you rode with the ones who burned our camp." Eli's hands stilled. He couldn't lie, not to her. "I did. I was there." The girl's jaw clenched. "Then why are you here now?" "Because I've spent 10 years trying to forget it," he said quietly. "And yesterday I saw that mark and realized forgetting ain't the same as forgiving." For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then the girl's expression softened, just a flicker. "You came alone?" "I did. You tell the town?" "Didn't plan to." That last part hung heavy, because they both knew what would happen if he did. Back in town, men like Sheriff Dugan and his brother-in-law, Pratt, didn't believe in second chances. An Apache on Carterland would mean trouble, guns, fire, justice spelled wrong. "You shouldn't stay," she said finally. "If they find you here, they kill you with us." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Wouldn't be the first time I stood on the wrong side of a gun." She looked at him, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. Then she whispered, "Water. Bring more if you can." The creek east, that was it. The first sliver of trust. Eli nodded, rose, and walked back into the fading light. Behind him, the girl's humming started again, low and mournful, but somehow steadier. And up on the ridge, unseen by either of them, a thin column of dust rose from the north road. Hoofprints. The kind that carried lawmen, or worse. By dusk, the wind had shifted. It came down from the hills like a whisper turned sour, dry, restless, carrying the smell of gun oil and horses. Eli Carter felt it before he heard them. That old soldier's instinct. The air goes still right before something bad breaks loose. He had just filled the second jug from the creek, his boots sunk in mud, when he saw the dust trail curling like a snake across the far ridge. 5 riders, maybe 6, moving slow, deliberate. He didn't need to squint to guess who it was. Sheriff Dugan rode like he was born in a saddle and never forgave the ground for existing. And beside him, the Pratt brothers, both loud, both mean. Men who needed an enemy to feel like heroes. Eli tied the jugs to the saddle, jaw tight. The girl and her mother were only a mile south, hidden in that ruin. They wouldn't stand a chance if Dugan's men found them. He mounted up and rode hard through the arroyos, dust stinging his eyes. By the time he reached the stone shelter, the sun was a dull ember on the horizon, and the girl was outside gathering sage, her small hands trembling when she saw him. "They're coming," he said. 6 riders, lawmen or what's left of them. She froze. "You told them?" "Never said a word," he snapped. "But they must have tracked me. Maybe someone saw me take the southern trail this morning. Either way, they'll find this place before dark." Her eyes darted toward the shelter. "My mother, she cannot move." Eli dismounted and dropped to a knee beside her. "Then we hide her. I'll draw 'em off." "No." She shook her head hard. "They kill you. You fight, they say we attacked." He looked at her then, not like a child but like someone who'd already lived through too much truth. The fear wasn't for herself. It was for him. Eli wiped the sweat from his brow. Sometimes doing right ain't about who lives through it. The girl swallowed, tears brimming but not falling. She said, "Men like you bring storms. You don't mean to, but you do." He didn't answer. Together they dragged the old blankets and broken crates inside, making the room look empty, abandoned. The woman's breathing was shallow now, her skin pale beneath the dirt. Eli laid her gently behind a fallen beam and covered her with a horsehide. When the hoofbeats came, they didn't come slow. The sound rolled down the valley like thunder, the rhythm of authority gone wrong. Eli stepped outside, rifle slung across his back but hands empty. Sheriff Dugan reined in first, his horse snorting, white foam at its mouth. The man's badge was tarnished, his eyes mean and small. "Evenin', Carter," he drawled. "Didn't expect to find you this far south." "Just checking my fences," Eli said evenly. Pratt spat into the dust. "That a fact? Funny thing, we found boot tracks by the creek. Little ones. Apache kind. You see anyone out here?" Eli's stomach knotted. "Can't say I have." Dugan leaned forward in his saddle. "Word in town is a band might be hiding out this side of the canyon. Killed a prospector last week. Folks are nervous." "Folks been nervous since before the war," Eli said. The sheriff smiled without humor. "You always did have a soft spot for lost causes." Behind him, the other men fanned out, their eyes scanning the ruins. The girl crouched just inside the shadows, holding her breath, the faintest tremor in her hand where it gripped a small knife. Eli stepped closer to block their view. "You're wasting daylight, Sheriff. Ain't nothing here but rattlers and dust." Dugan's gaze lingered on him a long time. "You know, Carter, some folks in town say you've been keeping odd company. They see tracks near your ranch. Hear stories. You harboring something you shouldn't?" Eli forced a thin smile. "Only thing I'm harboring is a bad memory and a thirst." The men chuckled, but it didn't ease the tension. Then Pratt's younger brother pointed toward the creek bed. "Hey, Sheriff, there's a jug down there. Fresh water, not old." The girl's eyes widened in the darkness. Dugan dismounted. "Let's have a look." Before Eli could move, the sheriff strode past him toward the creek, stooping to lift the jug. He turned it slowly, water dripping down the side. His eyes hardened. "Funny thing," he said quietly. "Apache clay." The moment stretched like a drawn bow. Eli's hand hovered near his hip, his voice steady. "Leave it, Dugan." The sheriff looked up. "That's so?" Eli nodded once. "Ain't yours to take." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Dugan smiled thinly. "You always did pick the wrong side, Carter. Maybe this time it'll cost you more than a pension." The sun slipped below the ridge, painting the ruin in red. And as the lawmen spread out, rifles ready, Eli realized he was standing on the edge of a line he'd already crossed long ago. Night fell hard across the canyon. The riders made camp not 50 yards from the ruin, their fire spitting orange into the wind. Eli could see their silhouettes, 6 men, the sheriff's badge glinting faintly in the dark. They didn't trust him enough to leave, but they didn't have proof to act. Not yet. Inside, the old stone walls were cool and silent. The girl sat beside her mother, whispering words that sounded like a prayer or a story. Eli couldn't tell which. The faint glow of a tallow candle painted her face in gold and shadow. He crouched near the doorway, rifle in his lap, listening to the distant crack of laughter from the lawmen outside. "They ain't going anywhere till dawn," he said quietly. The girl didn't look up. "They smell fear. Like wolves." Eli's lips tightened. "They smell what they're told to smell." For a while there was only the sound of her mother's breathing, ragged, wet. Then the older woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at Eli for a long, uncertain moment, then reached for her daughter's wrist. A few words passed between them in Apache. The girl hesitated, then nodded slowly. "She says you have ghosts," the girl murmured. Eli looked away. "She's right. She says ghosts follow only those who tried to do right, and failed." He gave a quiet laugh, hoarse, humorless. "That sounds about right, too." The girl studied him. "What did you do?" He hesitated, then leaned back against the stone. The candlelight flickered across the lines of his face. "I was a soldier once. We were told to make peace by taking what wasn't ours. Burned villages called it justice. Your people," he stopped himself. "I was there the day your village burned by the river. I didn't pull the trigger, but I didn't stop it either." The girl's jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. "I thought if I came here, worked the land, stayed quiet, maybe I could grow something good out of the ashes," Eli said. "But some things don't stay buried." For a moment, only the crackle of the fire outside filled the silence. Then, to his surprise, the girl rose and stepped closer. Her small hand brushed the mark on her wrist, the same brand that had haunted him since yesterday. "My father had this too," she said softly. "He died by the river. You say you didn't stop it, but maybe now you do." Eli looked up at her. "And how would I do that?" She crouched beside him, eyes fierce and unblinking. "You can tell the truth." He almost smiled bitterly. "Truth don't mean much to men with rifles." "Then you tell it to me," she said, "and I will remember." Something inside him cracked then, not loudly but enough. The words came slower now, heavier, like stones rolling down a hill that had waited too long to give way. He told her about the river, about the orders barked through smoke and gunfire, about faces he still saw when thunder rolled. He told her about a child's cry that had pierced the chaos, a sound he had tried to forget until now. And when his voice broke, she placed her hand over his. "You remember because you still have a heart," she said quietly. "My people say the land keeps every sound that was ever spoken. Maybe it's been waiting for you to speak this one." He nodded, eyes burning. Outside, the laughter of the lawmen faded. The fire snapped once, then settled. The girl looked toward the darkness beyond the ruin. "When they come," she whispered, "I will speak too. I will tell them who you are, that you saved her." "They won't listen," he said. "Then I will make them." Her mother's hand reached out, weak but steady, and found Eli's. She said something in her native tongue, soft, almost like a blessing. The girl translated. She says, "The water remembers who carries it." Eli stared at her, throat tight. "What does that mean?" The girl's eyes shone. "That kindness is never lost, even when the desert buries it." He looked toward the distant glow of the campfire, where 6 men waited to bring judgment come morning. And for the first time in years, Eli Carter didn't feel afraid. He loaded his rifle quietly, the click echoing like a heartbeat. "Then I reckon the water's about to flow again," he said. Dawn came pale and slow, dragging the desert into color. The fire outside had burned to embers. Eli stood near the ruin's doorway, rifle low, eyes hard. The girl was awake beside her mother, clutching that chipped jug he'd filled the night before. The woman's breathing was shallow, but her eyes stayed open now, watchful, calm, as if she already knew what was coming. A single hawk circled overhead. The day would be dry, too dry for blood, hoofbeats. The riders came back without warning, 6 dark shapes against the rising light. The sheriff's voice rang through the still air. "Carter!" "Step out slow and don't reach for that gun." Eli exhaled. The girl looked at him, fear caught between her ribs. "Please," she whispered, "they'll kill you." "Maybe," he said, "but not before they hear me." He stepped out into the morning. Dust rose around his boots, the cold steel of his rifle gleaming dull in the new light. Dugan's men spread out, rifles resting on their saddles. The sheriff rode a few steps forward, his hat low against the glare. You find your ghosts yet? Dugan asked. Eli didn't answer. Funny thing, the sheriff went on. We found another camp north of here last night. Looked like it belonged to a couple of strays. Empty now. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Eli's jaw tightened. I know they weren't hurting nobody. Pratt laughed. You sure about that? Every Apache says the same before they cut a throat. Eli raised his voice, not loud but clear. You know what I saw yesterday? A girl carrying water for her dying mother. No knife, no raid, no war. Just trying to keep her alive. Dugan spat. That girl ain't your concern. She is now. The words hung in the air like a gun half-cocked. The riders shifted in their saddles. Dugan's smile was thin. You talk like you forget who you are, Carter. A man with your past should know better than to pick the losing side. Eli met his gaze. Maybe I finally picked the right one. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Then Dugan raised his hand. Boys, a voice broke from behind Eli. She's my mother! The girl stepped out of the ruin, her small frame trembling. Jug clutched to her chest. Her eyes were bright with defiance and tears. You say my people thieves, killers, but she's only sick. We take nothing. We want only water. The men hesitated. The youngest Pratt blinked uneasy. She's just a kid, Sheriff. Dugan scowled. Back off, boy. They'll grow teeth soon enough. She already has, Eli said quietly, and more courage than most grown men I know. The sheriff's eyes snapped to him. You aiming to die for her, Carter? Eli's rifle came up, slow but sure. No, Sheriff. I'm aiming to live right for once. The air tightened. Somewhere far off, a bird cried a single piercing note. The standoff stretched. The girl stood frozen between them, her jug still held high. Then, without warning, she walked forward, step by step. Every man's finger twitched on a trigger, but she didn't stop. She walked straight up to Dugan's horse, lifted the jug, and poured a stream of clean water onto the dry earth between them. The water pooled, catching the morning sun like a mirror. My father say, she whispered, voice breaking, the land drinks only truth. The sheriff didn't move. He just stared at that glimmering puddle, small, shining, stubbornly alive against the dust. Eli lowered his rifle first. The others followed, slow and uncertain. Dugan's hand dropped. His voice came out rough. You and the kid? You're off this land by sundown, Carter. After that, I ain't your friend no more. Eli nodded. Never asked you to be. The men turned one by one until only the sound of hooves faded into the desert distance. The girl stood there shaking, her hands still damp with water. Then she turned to him, eyes wide. You didn't shoot. Didn't need to, he said. Sometimes truth's got better aim. She almost smiled, small, tired, real. Inside the ruin, her mother whispered something faint. Eli helped her sit up, offered the last of the water. The old woman drank, looked at him, and spoke her final words in a voice soft as wind. The girl translated through her tears. She says, the water remembers you now. Eli swallowed hard. He looked east where the sun climbed higher, burning away the shadows one by one. Weeks later, folks in town whispered that Carter sold his ranch and rode south. Some said he joined a mission near the border, teaching the children to farm, building wells where the ground was dry. Others swore they saw him once, months later, riding through the desert beside a young Apache girl with a clay jug strapped to her saddle. Whatever the truth, the land kept quiet. But when the rain came that spring, the creek by Carter's old ranch ran clear again, cold, steady, and full. And those who drank from it said the water tasted like forgiveness.